and what you're experiencing is not love anymore. It's emotional residue, a psychological loop your nervous system hasn't fully released. Because you are not attached to the present reality, you are attached to a version that no longer exists. There is a stage after every breakup that most people misunderstand. On the surface, life continues. Conversations stop, access ends, distance becomes real. But internally, something doesn't update at the same speed. Your mind still holds a version of them that feels emotionally alive. Not who they are now, but who they were when your nervous system bonded with them. And that's where confusion begins. Because logically, you know it's over. But emotionally, your system is still interacting with a memory. So you don't feel in love, you feel emotionally suspended. Like something is unfinished, even though nothing is happening anymore. The real trigger isn't the breakup. It's the mismatch between emotional memory and present reality. You remember connection where there is now silence. You remember closeness that was inconsistent but emotionally intense. You remember moments your mind stored as meaning, even if they were never stable enough to become security. So now, even absence feels loaded. Even silence feels like unfinished communication, and even acceptance feels incomplete, because your nervous system is not responding to reality. It is responding to emotional imprint. The version of them that exists in your internal world is still active. So you try to move on the only way you know how. You remove reminders. You distract yourself. You rationalize the ending. You replay conversations to create closure. You try to think your way out of something that was never built in logic to begin with. And sometimes it works temporarily. You feel distance, clarity, even acceptance. But then something small interrupts it. A memory, a familiar emotional tone, a moment of silence that feels too similar to the past. And suddenly, your system reactivates what your mind thought it had closed. Because detachment is not a decision, it is a recalibration of emotional conditioning. And until that recalibration completes, you are not healing linearly. You are cycling through emotional echoes. Here is the truth most people avoid because it challenges the story of missing someone. You are not missing them. You are missing the emotional version of yourself that only existed in relation to them. The version of you that hoped things would stabilize. The version of you that stayed emotionally available despite inconsistency. The version of you that attached meaning to potential rather than reality. And when that version dissolves, it feels like loss. But it is not just heartbreak, it is identity recalibration. Because what you are grieving is not only a person, it is a psychological state you outgrew. Your nervous system does not attach to truth. It attaches to repetition, emotional intensity, and familiarity. So even when someone is gone, the pattern they created in you can continue. That is why you can feel detached one day and emotionally pulled back the next. Not because you are inconsistent, but because your system is still processing an incomplete emotional loop. And until that loop resolves, logic will always feel slightly weaker than memory. You do not need more closure from them. You need internal closure from the version of them you still carry, because closure is not an external conversation. It is the moment your nervous system stops expecting emotional resolution from a place that no longer exists. And when that expectation stops, the emotional version of them stops existing inside you, not because you forced it, but because your system no longer feeds it. There comes a point where something subtle changes. You think of them, and there is no emotional pullback, no internal negotiation, no silent questioning, not because the memory is gone, but because the emotional charge is no longer there. And in that moment, something becomes clear. You were never stuck in love. You were stuck in emotional continuation, a psychological loop that only lived inside your attachment system. You are not becoming someone who moved on. You are becoming someone whose nervous system no longer sustains emotional illusions. And when that shift happens, you don't lose love. You lose attachment to what was never emotionally stable enough to hold you, and what remains is not emptiness. It is clarity, stillness, and a version of you that is finally no longer waiting.